Hello, my name is Jonas Eichhorst, and today I'd like to share some personal lessons from 20 years in startups, venture capital, and from building Timo, Vietnam's first digital bank. Since submitting my proposal, I've taken the liberty to add a subtitle to my talk, essentially the punchline, "Don't hate the player, hate the game." To start with, let me share a story I first heard in university almost 20 years ago. A chicken and a pig meet. The chicken asks the pig, "Why are you looking so sad?" The pig sighs, "I need to make money." The chicken responds, "Oh, why don't we open a restaurant together then?" The pig says, "Interesting. What do you have in mind?" The chicken, all excited now, exclaims, "Hey, let's do bacon and eggs." Strictly speaking, this joke is not about ergodicity, it is about incentives and ruin. But these are two topics that ergodicity economics has helped me understand better. And if nothing else, hopefully I will have bought a little bit of your attention with its joke, given we are very close to the end of the very first day. I should clarify that I am neither a mathematician nor an economist. I'm not an academic. Instead, I've spent the last 20 years working in and around startups, as an investor, as an operator, and most recently as CEO of Timo, Vietnam's first digital banking provider. Think Revolut, Monzo, or Nubank in Vietnam. I stumbled upon Ola's work about 8 years ago, more or less by accident, and it was one of those experiences that fundamentally reshaped how I made sense of the world. "Once you see it, you cannot unsee it" is a favorite phrase of mine. You cannot forget it. You wonder how you could have missed that all these years. And the difference between time averages versus ensemble averages is exactly such an example for me. Mapping back to my own journey, today I want to share some real experiences, including how Ergodicity helped give me the tools to understand diverging incentives and how to reframe financial advice for the millions of Vietnamese we have interacted with. To start with, let me go back to my very first startup. We were looking at changing the world, building this amazing new company around semantic search. We found an investor who seemed very excited and put some money in. But very quickly, we learned he only really seemed to care about money. Nothing around changing the world. Painful for idealistic young me. We were pretty high risk and in the end failed. That unfortunately happens, and to his credit, there were no real hard feelings on either side about it, even though we had lost all the money. We both knew the risks in venture. What I didn't really understand, though, was his reaction when I once introduced him to another company that I was sure had the potential to double. A company I felt actually was a better investment than ours. Yet he was not interested at all, financially. Only years later did somebody explain venture capital math to me. Then suddenly it made sense. A VC fund makes around 10 investments over a 10-year life cycle into high-risk, high-growth companies. Everybody knows the famous Google or recently Revolut examples of funds making 100 times your money. The problem is, 50 years in, the industry still has no really reliable way of understanding who those winners are. So what a fund really is doing is carefully constructing a portfolio which can produce a positive return. 10 bets into 10 companies. Hopefully there will be that one outlier that carries the whole fund. One or two just don't lose the money, and the other companies will face ruin. In constructing such portfolio of plausible home runs, the company that was likely to double, but almost certainly couldn't even 5x, just was not interesting. Because for the fund, it wouldn't move the needle enough, it rather wasted a potential slot for a home run. As founders, we obviously find ourselves running a very different game. Of course, we would all love to be in the right fat tail of a distribution with crazy money, the Bezos, the Musks, or Zuckerbergs of this world. Unfortunately for us, however, statistically, we are much more likely to end up in that red zone, the zone of potential ruin. The same company and the same bet is actually part of a different process, part of a different geometry for each of the two sides. This means that both sides' incentives also suddenly diverge. While the fund's incentive is to continue to swing for the fences, as long as there is even the slightest of chances of turning something around into a home run, ignoring the ruin that we may face, a founder at the same time has the incentive to settle for a safe, good outcome instead of great. Now, not all of us are obviously in the startup game as founders or investors. At this symposium, I'm probably in the minority. So this example from the outside world may be curious, but does it really relate to you? Maybe, maybe not. However, over the last 4 years of building Timo, we have found similar incentive misalignment problems as we worked on what became the company's core mission, helping people confidently live richer. And that does sound relevant to everyone. Our core differentiation became money management. As a result, we quickly found ourselves deep in financial and life advice. This graphic represents the many paths our life could have taken and can take moving forward. I've seen variants of this for years and shared it with friends. I used to really like it. But over the past year or two, I also have come to view it as quite deeply flawed. Because, to put the punchline up front, my conclusion is that the damn problem with giving financial and life advice is that you just don't know when you're going to die. Seriously. Out of the many potential paths our life could take, we will only get to experience one of them. Maybe we have 5 more minutes, maybe we have 50 years. But of course, we have to prepare for any of these cases. If we knew how long, things were much easier, because for all the intrinsic uncertainty of life, at least one variable, the time span, would be known. But it is not, and that makes it very hard. Many of our customers wanted very narrow and specific financial advice. Yet, even the slightest question into a person's financial strategy revealed huge holes, leading us to start adopting a higher level, more holistic approach. We started saying that it was better to be roughly right with your finances than being precisely wrong. You can be roughly right once you have the right language and basic mental models. Not absolute best, but not terribly wrong. Black-Scholes, for example, allows you to calculate things very precisely, but getting the option pricing right when you meanwhile entirely miss the fact that you have no social safety net is getting it precisely wrong. The number one question for any insurance from a customer perspective was, how much will I get back? And if that is less than what I paid in, then clearly this product is a scam, right? I'm obviously not here to lecture or teach any of you on the benefits of insurance, pooling, diversification, or any of these topics, which all of you will know likely far better than me. Yet I would like to emphasize how Ergodicity helps provide some language to explain to people without any prior financial or mathematical knowledge how to make sense of a seeming conundrum of potentially getting back less than you paid in, and it still being a great deal. With the right language, we suddenly found people to be much more understanding. In the pre-talk to this symposium, I heard the idea of ergodicity not necessarily having to be something binary, but rather a spectrum or continuum of sorts. I find that a very interesting idea. I do not know what others will present during these 2 days, and hopefully there may be a better, more precise treatise of the topic. But at least in my head for now, I think about time average and the ensemble average as 2 vectors being at a certain angle with each other. They may point in the same direction, or they may point in totally different directions. The less ergodic, the larger the angle. And what I have come to realize is that different organizations and mechanisms allow us individuals to bridge that gap, essentially a portfolio construction and diversification exercise. But without understanding ergodicity, without having the language to talk about it and realize how one person's time average is another organization's ensemble average, it's easy to get frustrated with each other and not realize those structural differences, even suspect more sinister motives, especially in low-trust environments like Vietnam. The chicken asking the pig to open a bacon and egg restaurant is ethically pretty clear-cut in my book when it comes to incentives. But Let's close with a weird thought experiment in line with the theme of society and finance. If I were to sell annuities, I would wish each of my customers individually a long, happy life, because I hope I'm not an evil person, I'm a nice guy. But I also secretly hope that a bunch of members of his pool die sooner rather than later, for the good of the institution. And because that improved ensemble average in return will be good for the time average of the remaining individuals. That seems absurd to me, but it kind of follows from that difference in incentives and the two sides of that same coin flip being part of an organization's game as well as an individual's life. This difference in incentives, in perspectives geometries, is why I conclude this talk with don't hate the player, if anything, understand the game, be able to talk about the game, and then hopefully you can come to hate neither. Thank you.